because it's practical. It's things that you really do take into your daily life and into the workplace. So I'm excited for this one.
Yes, and I am thrilled to be your teacher. Well, I'm not going to brag, but I won 5 teaching awards when I was in my 30s. Today's my birthday. I'm 49.
Happy birthday!
Thank you.
I'm sorry you have to work on your birthday.
Isn't that funny? I'm off from my day job, but Thursday is such a great time for a live session, and I felt like let's just do this. And I enjoy meeting new students because it reminds me of when I started college in 1990 with a lot of doubts and insecurities and curiosity about the world. And I still have all of that. So I love sharing this experience with students. So for me, this is it is a job and I'm here to serve you, but I get something out of it too because I still enjoy exploring all of these ideas and they're so relevant now. Everything ethical is in the air. It's in the news.
Yes, absolutely.
So Nicole is here too. This is fantastic. Well, let's have a brief introduction and then we'll get started. This meeting is being recorded for the benefit of your classmates who couldn't be here because they're working or they're with their families. Hi, Nicole. And should you ever want to turn your webcam on, you can do so. I have mine on right now just so you can see me and communicate with me. I may have to turn mine off due to the bandwidth. There's only a certain amount of bandwidth that's capable when we're using the cable modem and we're connected to WebEx. So if there's a system strain and I'm using too much bandwidth, I might still be here, but I may have to turn my camera off. But for now, we'll go with cameras on. And again, anytime you want to talk, just unmute yourself. You can always turn your camera on, if you feel camera ready. If you don't feel camera ready, you don't have to turn your camera on. So this is great. So I'm Catherine Dove. I'm going to be your instructor. Just a little bit about my background. This is my 10th year with Rasmussen University. And honestly, I cannot think of a better place for you to be getting your degree. And I'm not just saying that because I work here, because I've worked and taught and been at a lot of other universities as well. And Rasmussen's been around over 100 years. Again, you've got the tradition, the reputation, the experience, the fact that all of us as instructors, we have to do continuing education so that we're staying on our toes. So it's a wonderful university. This is a 5.5 week course. This is we're starting out on a Wednesday, which was yesterday. So this is a half week. And then the course will go on for another 5 weeks. All of your written assignments are going to be due on Saturday. I'm sorry, on Sunday. And there is a 7-day late, grace period there. So, if you have something going on and issues come up, family illness, you have 7 days after the due date to submit something, but just understand that there may be a late penalty for every day that you're late. And you should always talk to your instructor, me, in the event something happens. Don't hesitate to call me on the phone, send me a text message, or just use your course email. Communication is definitely going to be the key to a successful college career. So again, this is a course in ethics. My bachelor's degree is in philosophy and political science. So I spent at least, I would say, 40 years of my life considering very deeply ethical issues. And now is just a wonderful time to be studying ethics because you can just turn the TV on or turn the computer on, get on Facebook and see all of these ethical dilemmas. So we're going to be exploring these together. You feel free to share all of your thoughts. We're going to try to avoid any issues that I think are too sensitive. And just use your best netiquette in the discussion forums. We usually don't have any issues with any of that. So let's get started. Let's have an introduction from Nicole. Tell us a little about yourself, Nicole, if you don't mind.
I am currently working on obtaining my associates in business management and I plan on going for my bachelor's in supply chain management and logistics once I complete this program. I am in Florida, and that's it.
That's awesome. I taught supply chain management at another school about 15 years ago. Love the course. The concept is so important. If you're going into business, if you want to start your own business, if you want to work your way up the corporate ladder with any kind of company, you need to know supply chain management. So, hey, that sounds like a wonderful career field, and I'm sure you'll find tons of job opportunities there, Nicole. And where do you live again?
I'm in Ocala, Florida.
Beautiful. One of my best friends from high school's in Tampa. So I went and visited her about 10 years ago. I love it there. There's so much to do, especially she has three kids. So it was like water parks and, and busch gardens and museums, and there was so much to do. So I love Florida. It's so beautiful. I live in Las Vegas. I've kind of gotten used to the dry heat out here, and I don't like humidity. So that's why I'm like, I'll just stay out here west in the desert. It's great for social distancing too.
I'll make it one day to Vegas.
Yes, it is a lot more than what people think. It's really an interesting place. There's a lot of places to go hiking. I like to do a lot of that. Biking. There's a lot of things to do for kids here. Um, there's so much. It's absolutely gorgeous here. There are hot air balloon, museums, and there's all kind of fun things that are going on here. Tons of things for families to do. Of course, there's all of the shows and the magic, so yeah, I like it. And the rest of Nevada is just a big desert, so it's very, very quiet and peaceful. All right, fabulous. Thank you for that introduction. Let's get to know Brianna a little bit.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I have a dog back here. I'm from Chicago, and it's a sunny 65 today, which makes me happy because I get to enjoy this class, looking at the beautiful weather. I actually am in for human resources and business. So I've already been in for, it'll be a year in August, so I'm super excited. As most people, I was actually hit really hard by COVID because I was working a corporate job and never really had to attend college. So I kind of restarted everything last summer when my furlough went to a permanent layoff. So this is all brand new for me, but I love it so far. Like I said, it'll be a year in August that I've been in school and I'm enjoying the ride and getting to take all the courses. I'm super inspired to start a new journey and kind of change paths um, in my career. So, yeah.
That's wonderful, and it's wonderful to have you here. And again, one of our goals at Rasmussen is to make you a lifelong learner. Like me, I went to college and I thought I was going to become a scientist. That's kind of what was on my mind, and ended up changing my major once I got more interested in these philosophical ideas and interested in government. Decided to change my major to philosophy and political science. And I said, well, I'll be, maybe I'll go work in politics. And then I realized I didn't really want to do that. So then I went to law school, and that was another entire educational journey. And, once I graduated with the Juris Doctor degree, it's like, gee, at this point, I realize I'm just about to become a lifelong learner. And then being a teacher as well, you get so into education, and it's fun though, because once you start to learn, you realize how much more you need to learn and how much more there is to go. And that's what I'm learning every day. I learn from students, and I find out, how much more I need to be learning, and how much more, is possible when you've attained this knowledge. You can empower yourself and do so much more with it, and have so many more opportunities, and take control of your life, when you have the education and the degree. So it's going to be great for you, Brianna. So
Thank
glad
you.
you're here. Well, let's get started. So this is a course in philosophy. One thing we do as philosophers is called epistemology, and that means we're just looking for the foundation of knowledge to figure out what is it that I can know. And historically, what philosophers did is they looked at math and they said, well, if I take 2 donuts and I take 2 more donuts, I got 4 donuts. And that's true everywhere. So, mathematics became one of the bases of knowledge. A lot of philosophers were also mathematicians, like Descartes pretty much invented algebra. So we're talking about a branch of philosophy. Philosophy is a love of wisdom, and we're talking about ethical, um, ethical philosophy, moral philosophy, and ethics, because it's such a important topic now for college students who are faced with moral dilemmas, for citizens of countries who are faced with moral dilemmas in terms of their governments, and as well for people in business trying to figure out what the ethical way to do business is. It is definitely not an easy answer in an era of outsourcing, in an era of downsizing, in an era of wage disputes, and should we pay people more? Should we provide more benefits? What is the correct thing to do? So these ethical issues are all on the table right now. So what is ethics? Ethics is a study of morals, which are the beliefs concerning right and wrong, good and bad, and their associated judgments, values, rules, and theories. So whenever we're talking about philosophy, morality, and in this course, ethical theory, we've got to get the definition of the term down straight so that when we're talking, if I say something and you get a picture of an orange in your head, but I have a picture of an apple in my head, then we're not really communicating. Have you ever had a conversation with someone and you felt like there was just no point of communication or agreement? Like you're talking, but they're not understanding you. Have you ever had that situation before?
Yeah.
You both said yes. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of reasons why, but sometimes it's just that we're not agreeing on the facts. We're not agreeing on the basic definition, the basic fundamentals, and we've got to at least be able to come to some fundamental agreements about what terms and things mean so that we can have a conversation, in English or any other language. So this is our definition. Ethics is the study of morals, which are the beliefs concerning right and wrong, good and bad, and their associated judgments, values, rules, and theories. There are 3 main types of ethics. One is normative ethics. Normative simply means what should we do? Now, what we do on a given on a day-to-day basis is not always ethical. Brianna, can you give me an example of something that happens all the time that's not really ethical?
Well, yeah, I mean, a couple of different instances, places that I've actually been employed. For example, there was a girl that was stealing time when she was on her lunch. So that definitely wasn't ethical.
Perfect. Yeah, I know people that have stolen things out of the office. I had a coworker once. She worked in a law firm and she was always stealing pens and notebooks. And I never had the temptation to steal. Everybody's very different, but I grew up in a military family and it was very clear what was right, what was wrong. And I've never had a temptation really to steal or to steal time. People do that. So that's wrong. Normative ethics. Okay, Nicole is retired military. Thank you for your service. So normative ethics says, what should we do? Well, what we should do is work our hours, report them correctly, clock out for breaks. That's what we should do. So that's the difference between what people do and normative ethics. So normative ethics studies codes, principles, and rules and theories that guide our actions with an ought claim. Normative ethics is what we should do. It's higher than what we do because we know what people do is not always ethical. Normative ethics is what we should be doing. Meta ethics is a really philosophical question that says, what's good anyway? What's bad? Who decides? And then applied ethics is taking moral theories that we've learned and applying them to a real issue, to a specific set of facts in a given profession or a scenario. That is what we're going to be doing. We're really going to be doing applied ethics. And it's going to give you the theories, the knowledge, and the skills that you need to resolve the ethical dilemmas that are facing you in your life, in your career, and in your business. Why study ethics? Well, there are moral and legal implications of your actions. Accountants are held to a certain standard. Lawyers are held to a certain standard. Some of them fall short. Doctors are held to a certain standard. Nurses are held to a certain standard of ethics, professional ethics. If they fall below those ethics, that's negligence. Architects are supposed to design building according to certain standards. If they fail to do so, that's negligence. So, you know, we as professionals, we're going to have to learn how to make good ethical decisions because our actions impact others. So let's get back to the history of philosophy. We live in the West. In the Western world, our deepest, most historical philosophical ideas come from ancient Greece. In ancient Greece, there were three important people. SAP is a good acronym. S stands for Socrates, A stands for Aristotle, P stands for Plato. Who were these three people? Socrates was a warrior, lived in 500 BC. He was a bit of an enigma. He would wander around Athens trying to get people into contradictions and philosophical debates. And you probably have friends like this. They always want to debate gun control, or they want to debate, right to life issues, or they want to debate something having to do with whether we should be at war, or should we be paying taxes, or should we have free health care. There's some people that like to bring up those kind of discussions. Well, Socrates liked to do that in ancient Greece. What he would do is try to get people in a contradiction to show them that they don't know as much as they think they know. That technique is also used in law school and is called the Socratic method. Well, Socrates became so good at it that he really started to annoy people, and he was charged with corrupting the youth of Athens. And his sentence was death by poison. So he had to, take hemlock and kill himself. Anyway, while he was alive, though, he taught Plato. Plato was his student. Plato opened a school. Plato then taught Aristotle. Aristotle opened a school also. Plato and Aristotle wrote a great deal about philosophy and a great deal about ethics. We're going to look at some of Aristotle's ethical theories and writings in Module 3. So these are the ancient Greek philosophers. Socrates taught Plato, who wrote a lot about philosophy, and Plato taught Aristotle, who is historically known as the philosopher. So one of the things that Socrates said is that the unexamined life is not worth living. What do you think that means, Brianna? The unexamined life is not worth living.
I think that it's really about discovering life and asking questions. And if you don't, what's the point of having a mind?
You're absolutely right. And I think that's what Socrates meant. And Nicole says she agrees. I absolutely think that's what Socrates was getting at. And, you may go through life sort of on a path of making random decisions based on circumstances that you didn't really decide. Well, I live in Texas, so maybe I'll go work at the restaurant down the street, and maybe I'll do this, and maybe I'll do that. Well, that's one way to live, but there's another way to live when you examine your life and say, gosh, I think I'd really like to become a nurse, and I'd really like to live in Chicago. So let me move to Chicago. Let me go to nursing school. Let me, find a career that will pay me $100,000, and let me buy this house. Let me marry this person. Again, it's when you examine your life and start making some decisions about the direction of life that you want it to go in. And Socrates is saying, well, that's more a life worth living, when you've examined your life and you start making some actual decisions, So that's kind of what he was talking about, which is exactly what you said, Brianna. So let's talk about what you do when you have to make an ethical decision. Have any of you ever seen an ethical dispute at work? Brianna brought one up about a coworker stealing time, which people will do. Did you report that, or did someone else, Brianna?
I had to call HR. I was her boss.
Oh, okay. How did that go?
We had a strong working relationship for over 7 years, so that was really tough when I became her manager and found out what she was doing because I had to go back. That HR had me go back years because obviously for business reasons we have to keep time cards. So I had to actually go back years and track all her time, and we actually found out that she was stealing time for quite a long period of time. So she had to obviously be let go for that. Um, so that was challenging just for me in general and tested me. And I was actually a new manager at the time. This was some years ago. And so that was like my first big incident that I had realized, okay, something's wrong here in the workplace. And yeah, but she was let go, unfortunately, but it just didn't sit right with my spirit. And that's where that, ethical feeling comes in is you have to do what's right. And so I had to call HR when I noticed the pattern in her behaviors through her time card sheet. So
Great example. And we're going to talk next week about duty-based ethics, deontological ethics, which basically requires us to follow universal moral laws, which means, lying, cheating, and stealing are wrong, and that ethics is based on the action that's taken, and that something that's done that's unethical regardless of the results. The fact that she was able to have a more restful day does not make her action ethical, and that it's unethical because she engaged in something that violates a universal moral law, which is follow the rules, be honest, don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal. So, this is an example of duty-based and deontological ethics, and just following the universal moral rules that we're all required to follow. Be honest, don't steal, don't lie, follow the rules, labor laws, etc. That's a great example. Have you had anything, Nicole, come up at work? Any ethical dilemmas that you had to resolve or talk to someone about? Okay, let's hear it. If you don't mind unmuting yourself. Okay, you'd rather type, that's fine. Can you see the chat box, Brianna?
yes, I can.
Awesome. Nicole is going to type her answer there. And then for anyone at home who's watching this recording, just be sure to click on the icon that opens up the chat box. Okay. People who, I've had students tell me about this before. You're in the military and your superiors fake scores on their physical fitness exams because there's programs where you have to maintain a certain level of physical fitness, and a lot of people are running every day to do that. Okay. And you've reported it to the higher up. Followed the chain of command, basically. Okay, good. Yeah, that's another example of deontological ethics where you have a moral duty to act in a certain way that's been violated, and it's a clear example of violating universal moral laws about honesty, fairness, cheating, lying, and so forth. Great examples. Let's move on. So here's some more theory. We're going to talk about theory for the next couple of weeks. Here's some more moral terms. Objectivism is the doctrine that some moral principles are valid for everyone, universal, regardless of culture, viewpoint, or my subjective feelings. Arguably, murder is wrong. Does anyone disagree with that? That that's an objective perspective. It's not really based on my culture, my religion, my ethnicity, or any viewpoint that I have. It's just that objectively, we can all agree that as a moral principle, there is an inherent value to human life, and that killing life, murder, would be wrong. That's kind of what objectivism says. You know, if everyone killed everyone else, society would fail. So, objectively, murder seems wrong. Absolutism is taking it all the way to the extreme, saying not only is murder wrong, there are no exceptions. That objective moral principle are rigid rules that must be followed. That would be murder was wrong, even in the case of self-defense. So, if you believe in objectivism, let's say you're home at night, just you and your kids. A man comes to the door, he's got a gun, and he says, "Are your children home?" Would you have to tell him the truth, Brianna?
No.
What if you believe in objectivism? You can't lie.
Ugh. So you're saying you can't believe in both per se. So I don't believe in absolutism, but I do believe in objectivism, but you're saying that you can't do that?
No, yeah, I mean, you're giving a good example. It's like if you were to kill someone in the event of self-defense, then you'd be someone who believes in objectivism, perhaps, but not absolutism, right? Absolutism says murder is wrong, even in the case of self-defense.
Right.
It's like, should a mother steal baby formula from Walmart, or should she let the child starve? What do you think?
That's tough. I don't believe in stealing, but oh, it's really tough. I mean, if my child was completely starving and I was a lone person on Earth, and I utilized all my resources, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's a hard question, but we're going to talk about utilitarianism next week. And utilitarianism says the morally correct action maximizes happiness and minimizes suffering. So if you minimize suffering by stealing from Walmart, you're probably going to get away with it. And now you've got your baby formula. I mean, sadly, the truth is people probably steal from stores all the time
Sure.
and they get away with it. I worked in retail when I was in high school. And again, I've never had the temptation or interest in stealing. So I was always the one who got hired to work. I worked in a jewelry store where we were, holding $10,000 diamonds and all this cash. I never had any interest in stealing, but I worked in department stores where we heard about people stealing bottles of perfume and we heard about stuff getting stolen. And security's not going to run after all of those people. They just walk out the door with it. There's not always a police officer there standing at the door of Walmart to catch shoplifters. So theoretically, if a mother has starving children at home, and she doesn't believe in an objectivism or absolutism, she might say that I'm going to steal baby formula to feed my kids, and that outcome maximizes pleasure and minimizes suffering. So these are tough questions, very tough questions. And suppose this one's been in the news a lot in the last couple of years. There was a woman who either lived in Washington or Oregon. She was only in her 20s, recently married. She found out she had terminal cancer. And there was a question of whether she would continue to suffer through horrible treatment or just take a pill and end her life. And the doctor gave her the pill and she decided what day to take it. Did you see that? It was on the cover of People magazine.
I didn't see
It
that.
was a year or two ago. She was a nice looking lady. And so it was a right to die issue. So when someone has terminal disease, should they fight on through horrible therapies, or should they have the right to just take a pill and end their suffering? Any thoughts on that? Nicole typed hers in the chat box. I think if someone is terminally ill and is suffering, they should be able to have that choice. That's pretty much what the courts have said as well. The U.S. Supreme Court and some state Supreme Courts have recognized a right to die. I know Oregon has a right to die, but some places, people or family members are making that decision for their loved ones. They're trying to hold on, you know.
Hmm.
But that's a moral dilemma. That's an example of a moral dilemma. And how that dilemma is resolved might depend on your belief in moral theories, which one of these theories that you follow. So let's keep going. Cultural relativism, very popular right now. An act is morally right if one's culture approves of it. Let's talk about marijuana. Marijuana is legal here in Nevada. I personally do not do drugs. I don't smoke, I don't drink either. But in Nevada, marijuana is legal. I believe it's also legal in Colorado. It's been decriminalized, I know, in California, Oregon, Washington, Alaska. More and more states are starting to decriminalize, some of these recreational drugs. I know part of that is to reduce reduce crime, because if it's not illegal to possess marijuana, that means the police and the criminal justice system are not tied up with people who are simply in the system because they are using marijuana. Instead, the police can go after the people that are actually a threat to public safety. So anyway, is the use of marijuana ethical? Any thoughts on that, Nicole and Brianna? Is that ethical to purchase and use marijuana?
Ugh, I personally don't partake in it, so I don't really doesn't it's not something that I normally think about. It is legal here in Chicago, or Illinois
Oh,
is the
okay.
state. And I do know people that use it, but and use it recreationally, but then I also know people who in my family have had cancer that have used it medically. And so it's kind of one of those toss-ups where, are you using it to suppress other issues, or are you using it for medicinal use? It's one of those pulls. So I guess I'm half and half. I'm not really sure.
Okay. And I think Nicole says it would be ethical if it's for medical use, recreational use as well. But when you're conducting an activity where it can inhibit your senses and cause an accident, then no, yeah, that's a good answer too. When it's, I'm a person, I don't stand in moral judgment of others, you know. I know when my neighbors are doing it because unfortunately I have to smell it. That's the drawback for me. It's like, oh my gosh, it smells horrible. But as far as the ethics of it, it seems, I would say that it falls into cultural relativism. There's certainly a certain subculture of people who enjoy marijuana recreationally and within that culture. And then there's subjective relativism. Subjective relativism says an act is morally right if you approve of it. So there it is. I mean, I think that marijuana is moving into the area of cultural and subjective relativism. If people believe that in their culture, their group, their friends, certain religions smoke peyote. But certainly, if you work with heavy machinery, you go to work and you test positive, you can certainly be fired from your job. You test positive for drugs. So there's definitely some consequences of your actions there, in terms of also parental safety neglect. Certainly, recreational drug users can have their children taken away from them based on neglect. So, you know, but certainly if you apply cultural relativism or subjective relativism, marijuana is okay. And that seems to be the direction that society is going, right? And the last theory is emotivism. Emotivism is the view that moral utterances are neither true nor false, but simply an expression of an emotion or an attitude. Brianna, can you give me an example of a topic, an ethical topic, where your feeling about that is driven by your emotions, or you have an emotional reaction, when somebody talks about a particular ethical topic, and that really, decides it for you whether it's ethical or unethical, like how you feel about it?
Well, I guess I could use the same example. There's maybe some people that would have thought that I shouldn't have said anything about the topic, such as the employee. She probably, well, she did state, that it was when I had approached her about it and we had to have a discussion about it. She was very emotional and said that it was an accident and please don't tell anybody. But in that instance, I had to do what was morally right, but it was off of emotions and attitudes of what she felt and what she didn't want me to repeat.
That's an excellent example. So yeah, someone who's doing something wrong may be able to justify it by their emotions. And you were certainly up in the area of objectivism. There is a rule that objectively needs to be followed. Time needs to be tracked honestly. So it was objectivism, you following the universal moral rules, and her emotions. So that's a good example. Another example that I would think about is donations. I always feel good when I donate to Goodwill, so that means it must be morally right. I always feel bad when I see commercials where animals are suffering, so that must be morally wrong. That's one way to look at emotivism. Um, I remember during the in 2003, the United States invaded Iraq. And there were a lot of mothers who were very concerned about their sons being sent to Iraq and then Afghanistan. And I think their emotions affected their belief as to the morality of that. When you see young men being wounded in war and coming back home or not coming back home, and you see thinking about their parents and how they feel, that to me, the emotions there certainly impact my view of the morality of the war. So I think there's some examples we can think about where um, your ethical opinion is driven by your emotions toward that particular topic. Any other thoughts about emotivism? I think emotions really drive a lot of our behavior, and it's going to be very important for all of us in the business world and the professional world to get past emotivism and to get where Brianna is, which is the objectivism, especially in a business and office setting. When you're dealing with other people, you need to be able to maintain objectivity, and you can't make all your decisions based on emotions. Because I know my emotions change from day to day, and I can't trust those as a basis for making sound decisions. I need some objective facts and some objective standards and rules as the basis of my decision. So I think that's part of what this course is about helping us to come up with some more objective theories and some rationale for our decision making beyond just the emotions.
If I can say something,
Sure,
it's
it's your class.
I think I think you nailed it on the head with the emotivism because the company that I was working for at the time, we would go through trainings on how not to work off of emotions and uh, how everything does come back down to ethics and following the rules of HR. So I think that's why there was like a zero tolerance policy with all the employees. It was pretty cut and dry. Everybody knew the rules. And as managers and leaders, we had to go through tons of different trainings to maintain our position and even tests and quizzes on it, just so that they had us on a straight and narrow path of right is right and wrong is wrong. And we had to lead like that. It was almost very militant style. Yeah, they wanted all their leaders that way. So I think you nailed it on the head right there.
Yeah, over time I've learned more and more about organizational ethics, working in corporate America, seeing the need for uniformity and the need for standard policies and procedures to be followed. One of the aspects of it is risk. If you work in a company and people are not following standard procedures and policies, you're at much greater risk of liability due to unethical, negligent, and illegal conduct. I mean, sexual harassment would be something that comes off the top of my head. And I've had many students tell me that they have been affected by that at work. That can result in a lawsuit against the company. The company has standard procedures where everybody is being treated professionally and not bullied, and there's no, there's no sexual overtures. The company can avoid all the liability, the resentment, the lawsuits. I mean, I even had a student, it's either last year or the year before, where this male coworker was coming by her house at night, and that's how she eventually ended up getting him. She had to call the police. He got arrested, and that's how she had to stop the sexual harassment. So that's why it's so, again, important to have those objective rules in place and then that they be followed. So that was a great example. And it sounds like you got really good training, good manager training.
Yeah, we did. We received really great training every 3 months.
Great. Let's take a little deeper dive into cultural relativism and then we'll get on with our assignments. So we were talking about relativism. Cultural relativism is the idea that ethics and moral codes are relative to each culture. From this perspective, what is right or wrong, good or bad, blameworthy or praiseworthy is dictated by the culture. There are 5 premises that underlie the concept of cultural relativism. Different societies have different moral codes. The moral code of a society determines what's right in that society. There's a premise that no objective standard can be used to judge one society's code is better than another. Cultural relativism would say there is no universal truth, no moral truths that hold true for all people at all times. The moral code of our society has no special status. It is one of many. And the result of this is that we should adopt an attitude of tolerance toward the practices of other cultures. If you think of the Muslim culture, that's a completely different set of standards, principles, and beliefs. If you look at ISIS, Muslims extremists, people who believe in Allah and believe that acts of terror, are designed to serve and honor and worship their culture and worship Allah. That would be cultural relativism, because in our culture, excuse me, I almost sneezed. In our culture, that kind of act of terrorism would not be acceptable. But obviously, in other certain groups, that terrorism is acceptable to them. And I think that could be justified by cultural relativism. Another example, Nazi Germany, right? Under Hitler, there was a belief that certain people needed to be sent to concentration camps. There was a certain belief that some people were inferior to others and people were, dehumanized and exterminated during the Holocaust. And the Nazis all justified that. Hitler justified it and got a group of people to believe it. That was true of that Nazi Germany. Of course, if you go today to Germany, they have tried to erase every remnant of fascism. They've tried to erase everything that happened during World War II. In fact, after World War II, there was a new world order where East Germany and West Germany were divided into 2 separate countries to stop the spread of fascism from East Germany to West Germany. In East Germany, kids were brought up with school books where they had torn everything out of the book between, say, 1900 and 1945. So the kids would not be taught anything about World War I or World War II or the Holocaust. That way they could be like it never happened, And if you go to Germany today, there's 1 or 2, historic sites that are still, there where you can look and see, evidence of the Holocaust, but a lot of that has been just erased. So that would be cultural relativism. Any comments or questions about the cultural relativism?
No, I guess would it also correlate with like how North and South Korea are? Like very split and divided
Yes,
in how they treat. Okay.
that's exactly a perfect example. And in the 1960s, it was North and South Vietnam. And we tried to go over there and fix that and stop the spread of communism. And we were defeated. They all went, all of Vietnam went communist, and we just had to come home. So it shows you how difficult it is to stop certain cultures from engaging in certain actions based on their beliefs. That's what the problem is again in the Middle East. That's why we haven't been able to do anything really productive in Afghanistan, because everything there is based on their religion, thousands of years of culture, and we're trying to change that. That's why this current administration is, withdrawing, all the troops, all the contractors, all these people that are in Afghanistan are going to be coming home. Because it's very difficult for us to try to fix a problem in a foreign country when everything that they do is based on cultural relativism. So yeah, that's the situation in Korea is a perfect example. So there are criticisms of every ethical theory. Let's look at the criticisms, the weaknesses of cultural relativism. One, just because there are many cultures with different moral codes does not mean they're all correct. Ethnic cleansing may not be right just because someone does it, right? Terrorism may not be right. Suicide bombing may not be right just because someone does it. Slavery may not be right just because a particular culture did it. So that's a weakness of cultural relativism. The fact that a culture does something does not really make it objectively right, because cultural relativism does not allow for universal moral truths. So you cannot expect everyone to be tolerant towards other cultures. If there are no universal truths, how can you create a standard code of ethics that can be applied across the board? And that's what we're looking at in this course, especially the direction that the world is moving now, with the ease of travel. Again, the way that coronaviruses are spreading around the globe. It's looking at the world not as just America, but at the whole world, Now we're hearing about how the pandemic affects people in France. How is it affecting people in Italy? How is it affecting people in London? It's not just how is it affecting people in Florida and Chicago, right? Everything now is global ethics. How can we apply a universal set of moral principles that are going to apply around the globe? And that's what we're going to be talking about for the next 5.5 weeks. Just briefly, we were talking about the criticisms of relativism. One, certainly in a business setting, it doesn't help you resolve an ethical dilemma per se, because it doesn't get you closer to any type of truth that you can necessarily use. And then this idea, I'm sure you've heard it. Have you ever been in a conversation with someone and it ends, "It's all relative, Nicole. It's all relative." Have you ever been in a conversation with someone and they say that? Brianna, it's all relative.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah. I've always seen that as a cop out. Nicole says, yes. Here's the problem. It is not all relative. Again, we go back to mathematics and philosophy. That's how we know what's true. If I take 2 donuts and I got 2 more donuts, I got 4 donuts. That is not relative to anything. That is an absolute mathematical truth. That's true not just here on Earth. That's actually true in the solar system and in the universe, because those basic mathematical principles are how we were able to put humans on the moon. It's how we're able to send space shuttles to Mars. It's a fundamental belief in certain mathematical truths, like 2 + 2 = 4. That is not objective. I'm sorry, that's not subjective. That's not relative. 2 + 2 = 4 is an absolute truth. It not only exists here in Nevada, it exists in Chicago. 2 + 2 = 4 is true in Toronto. It's true on Saturn, and it's also it's definitely true on the moon, because we sent human beings to the moon, and on the moon 2 + 2 still equals 4. So the truth is not actually subjective. There are certain mathematical and absolute truths, if you're in the healthcare industry, you know, we hear a lot about medical negligence, failure to diagnose, failure to properly treat patients. We hear about, you know, patients, human beings dying of strokes all the time. One of the reasons why is the doctor's failure to identify and correctly measure the blood pressure and then administer the appropriate medicine based on the patient's blood pressure. There was a celebrity a couple years ago out in Hollywood, went to the hospital with high blood pressure, died in the hospital. That should never happen because once they measure the patient's blood pressure, that's an absolute mathematical number. The doctor then takes out a book, decides what blood pressure to administer, gives that blood pressure medicine, and it comes down and the person lives. But again, if those mathematical principles are not followed and the ethical standard of treatment that the patient is entitled to by law, if that's not followed, people are going to die. A plane is or is not flying at a certain altitude. What happened to Kobe Bryant's helicopter? That just seemed to set off a chain of negative events in 2020. So Kobe Bryant was flying with his daughter to a basketball game. They live in Southern California, so sadly, getting to the school where her game was a problem if they drove because the traffic is so terrible in the LA, Los Angeles area. So Kobe Bryant's like, I'm just going to have to charter a helicopter to fly us to my daughter's basketball game. So that particular morning was very foggy. In fact, the police officers landed all of their helicopters. Now, if the police officers don't think it's safe to fly, would you think it's safe to fly?
No.
Yeah. So again, it wasn't about Kobe Bryant's opinion and it wasn't about the pilot's opinion. It was about a factual set of circumstances, mathematical rules, laws of physics that boop, took that helicopter right down. First of all, they're flying in inclement weather. There's fog. There's no visibility. One erroneous move, and you're down. You're gone. So you know you need to know what altitude you're flying at, and you need to know the weather conditions. And those are not subjective. Those are absolute. There are absolute times when you should fly, times when you shouldn't fly, and failure to know that. So any questions? So these are some of the criticisms to people that say it's all relative. No, it's not all relative. It's usually all based on science and math when you get down to it. To not what somebody thinks is true, but what actually is objectively true. Knowing the facts, knowing how to ascertain the facts and make decisions based on facts versus just saying, it's all relative. Because saying it's all relative is not going to help us solve global problems, is it? Okay, let's get down to our assignments. Okay, so every week you'll have a discussion forum. You'll have 2 posts. The first post is due Tuesday. The reply post is due Saturday. Because this is a half week in a 5.5 week course, both of your posts are due on Saturday. You just need to answer the question that is presented, and then you need to reply to one of your classmates. As long as you do that, you can get an A. So, I'm gonna have to take you over about 5 or 10 minutes. Let me take the time to show you how to use library and learning services because this is very important. Do you mind if I take an extra 5 or 10 minutes?
Yes. No, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Let me go into the classroom. Okay, so I'm gonna go into the classroom Blackboard. So this spring we switched to Blackboard Ultra. which is a great learning management system. Going to log in to the classroom and show you how to use the library resources that you're going to need in the future. So there's our course. This is Ethics Around the Globe, Spring Term 2. So over here on the left-hand side is Books and Tools. So I clicked on Books and Tools, and then over here is Resources. The Resources tab is going to become your friend in need. Whenever you need to meet with a tutor, that's always available. You can talk to them about an assignment, about a discussion forum post, about something that you don't understand. You simply click on this tutoring platform. If you would like, I have the ability to make a tutoring appointment for you. Just let me know. And if I see someone struggling with like the APA format, I may set up a tutoring assignment for you. I'm not signed in right now to the student portal. So let's go back, but that's what you would click on if you would like to sign up for tutoring. What we're going to be needing is library resources. If you ever need to do research on any subject in ethics, there's at least 10, 20,000 books. You go down to this second section, search ebooks. Anytime you want to find a book, there is no need to go to a physical library. You would simply need to click on, I don't know why this link isn't working. You would simply click on search ebooks if you wanted to learn about yoga, how to do yoga at home during a pandemic. I'm sure there's a book on that. We're going to look at the APA guide. So the APA guide stands for the American Psychological Association. It is a citation form that you'll be using in Module 1, Module 2, and Module 5. So what the APA requires is for you to use in-text citations, standard formatting, 12-point font, double spacing throughout the document, a title page. I'm going to open up an APA style paper. Would that be helpful? Are you all familiar with the APA format?
Yes.
Oh, you are? Okay, good. Perfect. I don't have to open up the paper then. Just to give you a brief update, you do need to use in-text citations unless the information is something, you're talking about a personal experience and all the information is coming out of your head. Once you start talking about moral theory, you need to use in-text citations. You can cite to our textbook. You simply need the author's last name and the year of publication inside your document. And that in-text citation, there it is right there. Author's last name, year of publication. That simply means you paraphrased a statement about ethics, philosophy, utilitarianism, subjective relativism. You got it from the book, you paraphrased it, you gave proper credit to the author of ideas. And then that needs to match up with your list of references at the end of your page. At the end of your paper, you would have a list of references. It would look something like this. And you may only have one or two references. Author's last name, year of publication, title of the article. Any questions about that? And I'm glad that you're both familiar with the APA format. If there's someone who's watching this video who is not familiar with the APA format, simply take some time and look at the APA toolkit. There is a sample paper here, a quick start video, and so forth. So the main thing is you need to use in-text citations and references to show where you got the information that you're citing. I don't think I need to show you anything else that's in there. So let's look at our Module 1 assignment. It's taking your own ethical adventure, and Brianna and Nicole have both given me examples of ethical adventures that you've taken. You could write about those ethical adventures or something else. So in a 1 to 2 page paper, summarize a time when you had to make an ethical decision, explain how your different options would affect the outcome, what were some external factors that impacted your decision. If you would have been given more time to make your decision, how would this change your approach or your outcome? So be sure to proofread your essay and run spell check. That's just a pet peeve of mine. Once you get into the business world, a lot of times your written communication is what you're going to be using. You're communicating with people in writing. You want to make sure that writing expresses what you want to express, which is that you're a college graduate and that you know how to spell and that your teacher, me, knew how to spell and showed you that. And I know how to spell because I was taught by those who knew then. So run spell check always, proofread carefully. Sometimes when you're thinking something in your mind and you look down on the piece of paper, those two things don't match. So you want to proofread carefully, have your husband, your grandma, your dog, your best friend, have somebody proofread that for you if necessary. Let me show you the grading rubric. For every assignment, there's a grading rubric, and I'm going to share this with you. It shows you where your points are coming from. So this assignment is worth 35 points. 8 points will be criteria 1. Student provides a clear summary of a time when she had to make an ethical decision. Criteria 2. Student explains how the presence of different options would have affected the outcome. Criteria 3. List any external factors that impacted your decision on how to handle the ethical dilemma. Criteria 4. Discuss how having more time would have impacted your decision. Criteria 5. Be sure to include correct spelling, grammar, and punctuation, and that means APA format too. So it is very important for you to include an APA title page, in-text citations to the extent they're necessary, and a list of references. And you must absolutely use in-text citations and references for the Module 2 assignment. This assignment, you might just be talking from personal experience. You might not need references. And Module 2, you will absolutely need references. Any questions? I know I went through that quickly.
No questions about the assignment. The only question I have for you is every week now, are we going to be sticking to Thursdays for live class just so I can get my calendar right?
Would you like to have the live session on Thursdays?
Personally, for me, it works a little bit easier in the beginning of the week just so that I'm more prepared to write and do all my work, but whatever works for you.
Okay. For now, let's stick to Thursday. And I'm only saying that because based on experience, more people tend to show up on Wednesdays and Thursdays. But I will get some feedback from other students as well and find out if there is a better time. Because, yeah, I'm flexible. I wouldn't mind Tuesdays. I wouldn't mind Thursdays either. So, or Wednesdays.
Okay.
How would you like Wednesday? Would that be better?
Tuesday or Wednesday would be nice.
Okay. All right. I'll think about moving it to Wednesday. Any thoughts on that, Nicole? What day you would like to have the Module 2 live session? Oh, okay. Oh, you have another one. Wednesday would conflict with your other class. So we may have to stick with Thursday, Brianna. The great thing about this class is that there are no quizzes, to my knowledge. So you don't ever have to worry about attending the live session and then having a quiz. It'll more be like attending the live session and then you have like Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to do the assignment, right?
Yeah, that
Okay. All right. So yeah, I will definitely see what other students think about it. We'll tentatively say we'll stick to Thursday, but I will ask other students and see if a bunch of them also have a conflict on Wednesday or what the situation is. But we'll tentatively try to stick to this time. So for every week, there's a live session question, and you need to answer that correctly to get credit for the live session. So I want you to answer it correctly. Question is, what is one criticism or weakness of cultural relativism? All of your written assignments are due Sunday, May 16th. So the question is, what is one criticism of cultural relativism? And you would simply go and submit that using the live session assignments under Module 1 in Blackboard. And as long as you submit the correct answer, you get full credit. Any questions? Thank you, Brianna and Nicole, for attending. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And you're welcome. I will send out the link in case you want to watch this again. I'll send the link out to the recording tonight, and I will share the PowerPoint presentation as well because it has the live session question in it. Any more questions or comments? Okay, thank you, Brianna, for your excellent participation. Thank you, Nicole. And I will see both of you in cyberspace. I'll see you in the discussion forum because I'm going to start asking you questions about your posts in the Module 1 discussion forum.
Both of you have a great week. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.